really, really good to have you here. And I wanted to start with a question from one of our members, Supax. But I think it reflects what many of us actually wanted to ask you about, because many of us are interested in game dev in general. So how did you start? What got you into game writing? And if you have recommendations for those of us who might want to follow in your footsteps.
Well, the thing that I found whenever I'm talking to someone who's gotten into uh, game dev, but particularly writing for video games, is everyone has a very different, very weird story. So I started writing for a little company in Dublin that was making kind of awful Facebook games many years ago now, and but I just kind of randomly looked my way into it. I sent them a silly letter and enough of a portfolio that they were like, "Yeah, we'll give this guy a shot." Then I went and I did a whole bunch of marketing, and then I saw that marketing and writing, and then I saw that Larian was setting up in Dublin, so I was like, again, I'll send them a silly letter and give it a shot. So I got very very lucky that Larian was setting up here because otherwise I don't know how I would have ended up with such a cool, such an interesting company. But the advice that I always give to anyone, if you're looking to get into game writing, then the number one thing that you need to kind of have is a solid writing portfolio. And so just try and focus on that. Keep writing stuff, whether it's plays or scripts or playing around in Twine or, you know, very, very basic kind of game dev. But I mean, as long as you're having fun and as long as you're writing stuff, people are gonna feel the fun that you're having. But a lot of it is down to luck, and a lot of it is down to just sending application after application into different companies. I got very very lucky that my journey into game writing was as easy as it was.
Are there any specific things that you would recommend putting in such a portfolio?
I tend to recommend people try using Twine or something that will, which if people don't know it, is a very, very simple program that will let you make a very basic interactive story. So you have a paragraph of text and then a couple of questions kind of underneath it, and that will let you create a branching interactive story. And if you turn up with just like a little, basically a little game that's very, very easy to make, doesn't require any coding, doesn't require any technical skills. That puts you kind of above 95% of the other applicants because you're doing something that's a little bit different. But the other thing is just try and be aware of who you're sending a portfolio into and just make sure that you have the stuff that you have is going to match the things that they're looking for. Like if you are applying to Larian, something that shows you're interested in Dungeons and Dragons or branching kind of dialogues, interesting weird quests, that's all going to be really good, but that's not going to be as useful if you're applying to like kind of Gears of War or something like that, like someone who's making a very different kind of game. So just be aware of who your audience is.
That's awesome. I wanted to go back to your work at Larian, sort
hmm
of broach more in general what that involves. So, like, how long have you been there, and what titles and what characters have you worked on so far?
Oh boy. Yeah, I've been at Larian, I think 7.5, going on 8 years, something like that. So I've been there a while. I've seen the company really grow, which has been an incredible privilege. I joined Larian kind of just as they were working on the enhanced edition for the original Divinity Original Sin. So I think I have like a tiny additional writing credit in there somewhere for because I helped edit the journal. But that was basically the only thing that I did there. But then I was there from the very, very start of DOS 2, kind of right the whole way through, which was fantastic. And obviously have been working on BG3 as well. So yeah, I've been around, not quite long enough to have worked on Dragon Commander or anything like that, which is unfortunate because I still love that game. But yeah, no, I'm an old fogey at this point in the company.
And what are your favorite characters that you worked on? Like, is there
Oh,
some that we don't expect? Maybe.
I don't know. I mean, obviously, Fane and Astarion are my babies, but I think one of the characters that I really had a lot of fun writing was Meister Siva in DOS 2. Just writing someone who was very smart and kind of cutting. I guess that comes through with Fane as well. Was just like a whole lot of fun. And then the other one that I did that I had just so much fun with was the DLC for Sir Laura and Quirkus, which was just great because it was so silly and so dumb. It made me extremely happy.
You don't know how many people reload it like crazy to keep them alive.
I excuse me. Yeah, I did hear that. I heard that they had a habit of strolling into everything being on fire.
Oh
Which
yeah,
yeah, no, that was unfortunate, but
the,
I don't know. It made me happy.
I still
I would
have
have
flashbacks of the oil pit fight.
if after that someone came to me and was just like, "Do you want to just have an entire game of Sir Laura being like an absolute dumbass?" I would have just been, "Yes, 100%. I'm there. That sounds great."
Yeah, that would actually be great. And what about your writing process? This is a question by Pinku and Ray. So, how does it work when you have a scene of or a dialogue to write? Do you write solo? Is it more of a collaborative work? And how do you weave characters into a plot? Because of course there is an overarching plot, but also
Mhm.
there's a matter of writing characters into it.
Yeah, this is probably going to set a trend for a lot of these questions where I'm like, it depends. So it depends a lot on people's personal writing styles. I will write on my own a lot more because I'm a big nerdy loner who kind of just like hides in the corner with his headphones on and doesn't talk to people very much. A lot of the other writers are kind of more social and they will talk back and forth with the people that they're working on the scenes with, which is probably the better way to do it, honestly. But it does vary a lot. Main kind of way that you'll approach a scene is there's normally some sort of context that something is happening in. So you'll have an idea of the area that the scene is happening in. For example, like in the Grove, you're going to be any scene that you're writing in the Grove. Okay, this is a place where there's a whole load of tiefling kind of refugees. People are hiding. People are scared, and that's the context that you're writing in. Then you'll try and write something that makes sense within that story, that makes emotional sense, that makes kind of narrative sense. But also, you'll just spend a bunch of time sitting there being like, okay, well, there needs to be a traitor here or something like that. What is going to be interesting and weird and different about this character and this situation, and why are people going to want to talk to this person? Those are kind of the broadest strokes. Everything just gets iterated very heavily, and everything is very collaborative as well. Scripters and people will have input. The writers will obviously do their thing. And yeah, if something isn't working, you'll hear about it real fast. And a lot of people will have ideas on how to fix it, which is really great.
So, whether you're a bit more of a lone writer, it does get collaborative, right?
Oh yeah, no, it always does. Like everything is reviewed, and we will send scenes kind of to each other on the writing team to be like, hey, what do you think of this? Or I'm stuck on this particular point. But then also there's kind of review higher up, and normally it's just basically is Sven gonna like the thing? Is it gonna be cool enough for Sven? Is kind of the bar that we're all shooting for.
What happens when it isn't?
When it isn't, there's more collaboration and there's more iteration. So we say, okay, maybe this part of the scene is working and this part isn't. We just need to go kind of back to the drawing board with this. But normally, once you have something there, once you have a starting point, people will always have an idea of this is how we can improve this. And even if something's quite good, you will have conversations with people and they'll be like, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Wouldn't it be great if actually this character interacted with this other character over here? And all of these ideas tend to get kind of mixed together. Everything develops very naturally in a really cool, fun, interesting way. Although when you're working to deadlines, you can kind of tear your hair out. But that's where all the best stuff comes from. It's when people start talking to each other and we get very excited about the stuff that we're doing.
This is a question by Kota. Tricks that you use to get yourself into character while you're writing, and maybe you have a deadline and you get into that headspace that you would like to share.
One of the things that works really well, it works really well for me anyway, when I'm writing origin characters, is I will just basically open up a blank Word doc and have like a little interview with the character or little conversation. So I will just say something in my head to Astarion and then kind of without thinking, try and just type out whatever naturally feels like his response would be. And you get into a back and forth with the character in that sense. And it feels very janky and weird and dumb when you start, but it kind of quickly starts making sense, weirdly, after a page or two. You have a much better sense of the character's voice and how they're going to react to things, and it's a strange experience when you do it with Astarion and Fane, because neither of them are super friendly at the start, so you kind of feel like, oh man, my character is being really mean to me. But that really helps, because that's how they interact with all the rest of the world, at least at first.
I assure you that in the chat there are plenty of people who would pay to see that happening, from what I can read.
Yeah, those aren't getting published anytime soon.
Well, you might think about it. That would be really interesting content for the community to experience, I think. So going back to what you said about that there is an iteration process, all writers at some point come together for feedback, etc. Before that, this is a question by Kenny. Are you given a specific set of guidelines? How much free room do you have when writing a character? And is it from the ground up? This is specifically maybe about Astarion, but also other characters. I think it applies to other characters as well.
Yeah, that is kind of a difficult one to answer because there's so much back and forth. We start by pitching character ideas, so we will start off with kind of a sense of what a character is, but there's so much kind of, oh, I really like this, but I don't think that's working, and the stories go kind of from, or suggestions go kind of from the bottom up and from up down to the bottom over and over and over again. So it's very much this kind of game of tennis, and no one I think can really claim that they created any characters kind of whole cloth. There's so much stuff about Astarion that's been iterated and that's been brought in by Sven, kind of like ideas occasionally from other writers and stuff like this. I really, really love that he gets to be my character and that I get to spend so much time with him, but I can never claim that he's mine. Everything in the game is collaborative and everything in the game is iterated kind of really well. Which is how everything gets so hopefully polished.
It is really polished so far. Everyone has been saying how polished this game is already in EA. I can promise you that, we notice. You've kind of already answered that, but I would like to know if there are some specific ones that are a little bit of pet peeves of yours. This is a question by Nixmori, actually. Do you have any canons about a character that you write, but they don't make it in? And, are there any funny ones? This is my addition, but I'm sure she agrees.
Oh yeah, no, there's absolutely like whole bunches of headcanon stuff that we think of that do not make it into the game, and they are absolutely my secrets. And sorry, but no, I feel I would start getting into dangerous territory if I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is this idea that I have about like Astarion's past or Fane's kind of life or whatever else. Yeah, no, we have. I think most writers probably have a lot more in their head than what they put on the page, which is really helpful. It really helps to inform the character. It really helps to give you a sense of who they are, where they've come from, kind of where they're going. But it is always subject to change in kind of future iterations of stuff. So I wouldn't say anything. Sorry.
We tried. It's fine. We don't know how the writing for B3 is going, but we're assuming that it's either done or almost done. How do you feel? Are you excited to see the fans' reactions about it? Something that you're looking forward, or are you scared? How do you feel about the whole thing coming out at some point, hopefully soon?
Oh, just all of it. I feel like I have every emotion possible going kind of at any given time. I am mostly very, very excited. Like I'm really keen for all of you folks to see what we've been working on. I hope you're gonna like it. But yeah, there is always the fear. It's like, oh no, what if we don't? What if I don't like stick the landing with this particular story or this character or whatever else? I think there's a lot of stuff in there there's a lot of stuff there that I'm very very excited about. But I'm definitely going to be nervous right up until release day.
All the
There's
feels then.
all the feels, yeah. I mean, the stuff that you're seeing in EA, there is that and a lot more. I'm overall very excited.
I'm sure everyone looks forward to seeing more. You've experienced two games in a different phase, I guess, for Larian, right? So Divinity
Hmm.
Original Sin 2 and now Baldur's Gate 3, which has, I imagine, a scope that is. So Kota would like to know how does the experience of working on BG3 compare to Divinity Original Sin 2, and if there were notable changes in the creative process since then?
There were some practical changes which have made things a lot more interesting in a whole bunch of ways. The big thing is obviously everything's not just voice recorded in BG3, but also cinematically shot. So we've really expanded kind of the company to help cope with this. And it just means that whereas before you would, if you're working on a scene, you would have it's generally the writer and the scripter. Scripter's handling the technical side of kind of the characters and set up the dialogue, the writer's writing everything. Now you have a cinematic artist who's coming in as like a third party to that. And so now you have these three people talking about how they can make not just a scene kind of that's interesting to play or that's where the writing is fun or whatever, but it's going to look really cool. So we now have this extra layer on top of everything where you have to consider, okay, what's this character act going to be doing? They're not just standing there wordsing at you. They can be like doing something with a knife. They can, get stabbed halfway through the thing. They can. I don't know why all of my examples are so violent. Probably something for therapy, but it means we have a lot more scope to make something that's a lot more interesting visually, which is really really cool. It took a little bit of time to get used to. Just the idea that we can do so much storytelling with the cinematic stuff and with the visuals, but it also means that the pipeline is that much longer. With DOS 2, we could very nearly right up to a month before launch or something like that. Now that we have to get stuff written, recorded, mocap off to cinematics, everything has to be polished, everything has to be shot correctly. It means that we have to have a much longer lead time, and we have to have stuff that's good and done and kind of in the can that much longer before release. Overall, it's been really good, but it's definitely taken some getting used to.
You mentioned earlier about cinematics and similar,
Mhm.
and had adding another layer to that. Does it mean that you as a writer have a lot of input also on that aspect? Because that's something that I'm actually really curious about. How much input do you have on that?
Yeah, I mean, when we're writing the scenes where we have an amount of cinematic direction that we can give as well. So we can say, I mean, first of all, when we're coming up with scenes, if there isn't already a very clear brief on what the scene is going to look like, we can always suggest things. We can say this person is preparing food. This person is like kind of treating treating the bird in the grove. There's different little things that you can add in, and you can say, okay, well, this person should move around, or they should be practicing with their sword, like whatever. We can give this direction. A lot of the time, we will get feedback that's a very polite request of like, could you not? Could we do this other thing that isn't impossible to film? Which we are, of course, very, very happy to accommodate. Again, it's very collaborative and it's very iterative. So a lot of the time, we will go to cinematic artists and say, "Can we do this?" And they'll say yes or no, but you can do this other thing. And we go back, we write the dialogue that way, and then it gets filmed that way, and then they implement it, and it looks better than we ever could have imagined. That tends to be the way it goes.
Honestly, I look forward to see the results of this because we're really curious, all of us, I
Hmm.
think, about seeing, all of the cutscenes because we have quite a few now in EA, but
Yeah,
I'm quite
I do.
curious to see what comes next.
Yeah, I will say on the cinematic kind of front as well, we have to give tremendous credit to the actors themselves who are actually there in the suits, who are there doing the scenes, reading the lines, and they'll add so many little like flashes and little touches and stuff themselves. And because everything is mocapped, that all get translated kind of fairly directly into the game. So yeah, it's collaboration on 4D chess kind of levels. There's a whole lot of stuff.
Somebody in the chat thanking whoever decided that Astarion needed to do a prima donna turn in the mirror scene.
That is, I am pretty sure that is 100% Neil, just the actor doing just incorporating Astarion as perfectly as he does. He's magic.
Yeah, there's an inbound expression of love for Neil in the chat, of course, as
Yeah.
you can imagine. How different is writing a character who is an origin character like Astarion compared to
Hmm.
writing them as a companion? So as a sort of as a companion, as a co-protagonist rather than a protagonist of the game.
I mean, the biggest thing when you're writing a character as an origin, as like as an avatar, as someone that the player is meant to embody, is that you can't. If I have Astarion as a companion, Astarion can show whatever emotion I want him to show, or whatever emotion is going to feel right for him to show in that scene. When you're playing as the origin, though, when that's you, the player, you can't really tell the player this is how you have to feel. You have to feel angry or sad in the scene because they just might be like, no, that's not how I'm role playing this character. That's not how I'm feeling in this particular dialogue. So you can't foist your emotions onto the player in the same way that you can with companions or with like any NPC, which is challenging in some very fun ways, but also there's definitely times when you're writing it and being like, can't you just be really annoyed and I can just have like 4 different versions of f-off, like it would make writing a scene so much easier. But you have to keep building in these branches, you have to keep building in options, you have to make sure that the players have all the choices that they're going to want to have, that are going to feel natural for them to have in a situation.
Does it expand, in a way, your understanding of a character when you have to consider all the different ways they would react if you weren't in control?
Yeah, no, it really does. Like it makes it means you start questioning yourself in ways that you wouldn't if you were just writing them from one single perspective.
Mm.
And then you start discovering things about the character, and then you start finding out, oh, actually, this thing that I never would have considered otherwise is actually a really interesting path to go down. And that's when you get some just kind of weird stuff a lot of the time, but really, really good stuff. The weird is tends to be where the fun is.
What character? So, talking about expanding your horizons writing wise. So, if you
Mm.
didn't write Astarion, what character would you have liked to write?
Oh God, there are so many that aren't in EA. There are so many cool characters that I can't talk about. I think the one that I really would have loved to write is maybe Auntie Ethel in the in the Grove and then later the Swamp. She's so much fun. I mean, I say that with the understanding that I would never have written her as well as Rachel, who's a writer, actually did. She kind of embodied that evil, malicious, chaotic hag kind of energy just so well. But Auntie Ethel would have been fun to play with.
There is a lot of love for Auntie Ethel.
I know, yeah.
She's very chaotic and very, very evil, but also lovable in that way.
She is, yeah.
Moonmo asks, it's clear now that Larian is constantly upping their ambitions from one title to the next. Baldur's Gate is the demonstration of that, Baldur's Gate 3. What challenges does it pose for you as a writer? How does it affect the process?
Oh, that's a good one. On the one level, there's technical improvement, which is the stuff that we're talking about with what I was saying with the cinematics. Because you're doing something that's a bit more technically complicated, the process changes, the process gets longer, the process gets more complicated. But at the same time, you have more people touching things, and that means you have more different ideas coming in. You have more people you can bounce ideas off, and everything gets that bit more kind of collaborative and fun again. In terms of the creative side, as a creative, you kind of end up in that situation where I'm like, oh man, I finished DOS 2. That was really great. There were some characters I was really really proud of, and some things that worked out really well. And then you look at BG3, this whole giant world, and you're like, well, I can't do any of what I just did. Everything has to be new and fresh and so much better and cooler than the last stuff was. So there's always that pressure to up your game a little bit more and to bring more to the table, to bring something kind of newer or fresher or sometimes just weirder to the table. So it tends to work out, hopefully. But yeah, there is a really good drive to better yourself and to do something different kind of every time round.
I'm sure everyone looks forward to see how ambitious really this game is, to be fair. Honestly, I look forward to see what you did with the characters and everything, personally. I have to do a little parenthesis though, because I received a bunch of questions about Fane, and I didn't really know where to put them in the Q&A, but I figured before we move forward with the Astarion questions that
Sure, yeah.
everyone is curious about, we should ask a couple of Fane questions. Yeah, I have an entire Astarion questions section talks, and it's the longest one of this Q&A. But I did receive a few Fane questions, and I think we should
Okay.
answer them before that. Stupax asked, which character did you draw inspiration from for Fane?
Oof. Saying kind of, it's very difficult to talk about the characters you drew inspiration from. It's a little bit relevant at the start, but it very quickly kind of fades away in the background of the character developing their own voice. So I think the ideas that we were knocking around with at the start for Fane were kind of like Sherlock Holmes slash House kind of characters, just people who are very, very high-minded, very intellectual, quite arrogant. But Fane developed his own voice fairly quickly. So they worked as a good starting point, but like all of them basically become their own thing very quick. Yeah, but Fane was just basically kind of anyone who was very smart but a bit of a dick and kind of useless socially.
Well, it fits with the other examples you mentioned, especially
Yeah.
Sherlock Holmes. I have a question that you don't really have to answer, but everyone would love that if you did, about the mechanics of researching his romance scene in Divinity Original Sin 2. So, how does one bone a skeleton? Oh yes.
Uh,
This server is, chaos and horniness. So
hmm
unfortunately, we have to deal with that on a daily basis.
I can't believe I've been here this long and you're only now asking me like the real questions, the important stuff. It's I am going to leave the mechanics of boning a skeleton up to the imaginations of everyone present. So yeah, no, there is definitely a bit of me that was like, oh man, it was so much easier back in DOS 2 when you could just say a thing happens and you don't have to go into it in too much detail. Whereas if I had to hand over some of the Fane scenes to cinematics right now, I'd be very worried. Um,
It would
yeah,
be really
it's
fun to see, though.
yes, it would be tremendous fun. And I'm sure they would do something amazing with it.
They would
That one's
probably
down to
have to invent a category of rating just for that.
potentially no, but that one's down to the power of your imagination, folks.
We're gonna leave it at that, I guess.
Hmm.
All right. This was from Nixmori. I don't take the blame for this one. I was made to ask, so this is very important to me that I'm not getting blamed for this question.
Yeah, thank
Uh,
you, Nixmori, for asking the questions with that are really important.
she thanked you for answering that,
Yeah, I can
of
see.
course. So, what's your favorite Astarion or Fane meme? How do you pronounce it in English? Meme, I guess. Or
Me.
fun content, something that really struck you. And be mindful that most probably it originated here.
Yeah, I'm extremely mindful of that. It sounds cheesy, but I genuinely mean it. Like I can't pick a favorite. I can't look at any one thing and be like, oh no, this is the best. Because every single piece of like fan art and every meme and everything that's out there it's something that people put time and effort and care and love into. And I'm like, every single one is appreciated. They're all great. It's a bit of a cop out, but I get extremely happy every time I see fan art. So it still feels very weird that people make memes and draw the characters that I spend time working on. But it's one of the greatest privileges. It's really something.
I know for a fact because I've read some comments that actually you appreciating artworks really inspires artists a lot. So I have to tell you that because it inspires them to grow and do a lot more art. So it's really great that there is this
I'm
feedback loop.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad. But I mean, like, just appreciating stuff and giving people shout outs when I can. It's pretty much the least I can do. So it's no, like, thank you genuinely to everyone who makes art or who contributes kind of to the culture, the fan culture, and the game. It's really something else. Even and maybe even especially you nasty freaks. You know who you are.
Talking about nasty freaks and weird questions and memes, right?
Hmm.
If Astarion and Fane, this is by Munmo, as before, I don't take blame for these questions. If Astarion and Fane got into a fight, who would win?
I feel like Fane would have the edge just because he doesn't have flesh to bite or blood to drink. Like
Hmm.
he's got the advantage from the get-go, but also I feel like Astarion would fight dirty, so it's kind of difficult to say. I'm gonna give Fane, yeah, like the slightest of edges in that one, but I'm not sure. I feel like Astarion would definitely think of something terrible to do.
So it's almost a tie, but maybe with a little bit of an advantage to Fane.
I think so, yeah. And again, just mostly just because Fane's a skeleton.
Yeah,
But they both have that I've been trapped somewhere terrible for a very long time vibe going. So they're both kind of pretty tragic in their own ways.
would be an interesting fight, to be fair.
Oh, it would, yeah.
Maybe it could become an idea for one of the character dialogues that you
Hmm.
write before to put yourself in the headspace for
Yeah.
writing.
Now I'm just thinking of Larian Smash Bros. Like it just sounds like the best time. All
I
our various characters just knocking lumps out of each other.
The chat exploded when you say that, so maybe pitch it to Sven. Yeah, everyone would play that apparently. I honestly yes, but only if we get Sir Laura to fight as well.
Oh yeah, no, of course, for sure.
Okay. Okay. Now we can go towards the more Astarion-oriented questions, so that we satiate the masses on
Hmm.
the server. So let's start from the basics. So how was Astarion born, and did you have a brief or a concept to work on, or did it come just from you?
I mean, yeah, it's one that I touched on kind of before. I had a very vague idea of the type of character that I wanted to do, and so there was a pitch there, and that kind of again the story just went back and forth kind of over weeks, if not months, and was just constantly tweaked the entire way through, not the entire way through the game, but for a lot of the time when we were working our way through early access. So the Astarion that's there now is not quite kind of what I would have initially pitched, but he is a much more interesting and a much cooler character kind of for that. I think the idea for Astarion actually originally came up when I was over in Ghent, and we were out for dinner with the writing team, and we were going around the table and being like, kind of, what's the ideal character that you would love to write? And we just kind of went one by one by one by one. And the idea for Astarion was some vague idea for Astarion was kind of what I said I really wanted to do. I think I might have used the phrase medieval Deadpool at one point, which was not, which I maintain would still be wonderful, but is definitely not what current Astarion is. But Astarion is like everything, very very collaborative, very iterative. Something that's just kind of, we go over again and again and again. We tweak and we polish and we try and get him into just the right shape. And I have to say, the character that's there now is someone that I have tremendous fun writing, and I'm very proud of and very pleased with. So everyone who's touched him, everyone who's worked on him, has done an amazing job.
I'm sure somebody will now mod a Deadpool suit for Astarion in game.
God.
This is gonna happen.
Hmm.
Okay, from Suitably Odd, has Astarion ever written himself? So have you looked back at any of his actions with dialogue and be surprised that it ended up that way? And so it happened, against your logic or your initial consideration. And do you have any examples of this that you can share, of course?
Honestly, I feel like most of it is, you very quickly get into a sense of, this is what the character is, this is how they'd behave, and this is how they'd react in these kind of situations. So you do very quickly kind of get a good sense of, this is how he would probably react. But there's a whole bunch of dialogues where I've been writing something and then been like, oh, this is just what he would say, and then this is how he would follow that up, and then this is the next thing, and it happens pretty commonly. I think I'm trying to think of any examples off the top of my head. I
Maybe
think
something that really surprised you.
I don't know. I feel like the whole, there's a scene in EA where he's chatting to Tav, and just kind of comparing how he imagines the different kind of characters would taste. Basically, if you drunk the blood, just everyone going around, everyone in camp just being like, I bet Gale would taste like this. And that whole scene was just very weird and just kind of appeared at some point. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is happening. I guess this is just the dumb strange thing that we're doing today. Because I was just sitting there like, oh, he would really want to know though, wouldn't he? Damn it. Yeah, okay.
I have to tell you that that's a fan favorite.
Hey, oh, good. I had a lot of fun with that one.
Yeah. Everyone kind of loves that scene, myself included,
Hmm.
actually. How did Astarion name come about as Tupacs? Were there other contenders as a name, or was that Astarion right from the start?
I'm going to be honest, I have absolutely no idea. I cannot remember where the name came from. I think I don't think I came up with it. I think it was one that Sven was like, "This is a cool name," and I'm like, "Yeah, sure, it is." I have to say, naming things is one of my biggest weaknesses in writing. I am useless at naming characters. People are guard 1, guard 2, guard 3 for as long as they can possibly be before I start getting in trouble. So yeah, I think Astarion was a name that was suggested kind of very early on, and just like, yeah, no, that sounds good. That works. It suits him.
Okay, it also takes the task away from you, I guess, if you don't really like
Yeah.
doing that. On the subjects of name, Suitably Odd remarks that there is, after a bit of sleuthing, Astarion's name is a perfect anagram of Ina Orta, and so his theory is that he turns out to be a vampire. I will let you
He ta-
comment on that.
the idea that Astarion is a vampire is absolutely ridiculous. He's just a perfectly normal, extremely pale, pointy-toothed traveler, just like you might meet on any road. It's ridiculous.
Who'd ever suspect of him? He's
Hmm.
such an innocent-looking elf.
He's extremely innocent. Yeah.
Just because he has a vitamin D deficiency, it's not his fault.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Could have happened to anyone.
Okay. I think this is the most asked question. There are 4 people who ask this. So it's Tumware, Tupac, Sophia, and Summer on Mars. I have to ask that because so many people were curious about this. So design-wise and personality-wise, what were the inspirations for Astarion? Did it look different than the concept art? Well, we already, I think, discussed what inspired his writing, but also, what inspired his writing as a character as well. After the initial medieval Deadpool concept.
I mean, again, Astarion was someone who we found a voice for him that worked, which took a little bit of time, but kind of once we settled on this is the right voice, this is the right direction, it came very naturally, it came very quickly, and he became kind of very easy to write. So it's not like I was pulling inspiration from specific characters for him. At least not that I can remember. As a character, he asserted himself very kind of strongly once we had his recruitment scene down. Actually, that kind of everything gelled and came together after that point. We were like, oh, actually, this works really well. This is him and as he should be going forward. In terms of his look, the look mostly comes from the concept artist. I didn't have a whole lot of input on that, but like I was very happy with how it turned out. I thought maybe that he looked like a little bit kind of younger than I expected, or he looked a little bit more kind of smooth, basically. I had a little bit more of a slightly aging rock star kind of in my head. And then, although I will say actually, as soon as I saw Neil's picture, Neil, who obviously is the actor who plays Astarion, I was like, oh no, that's Astarion. I think Neil looks more like Astarion than Astarion does. He's got these wonderful eyes and that can just kind of like pierce you. I'm like, oh man, no, that's great. Yeah. So if I was to change anything about Astarion, it would just be to make him a bit more like Neil. But otherwise, no, I think he looks fantastic. I'm
He does.
extremely pleased.
He does have the sass and the hair of a rock star, of an aging rock star,
Yeah.
doesn't he?
I just hope Neil doesn't hear this and thinks that I'm calling him an old rock star. It's like that's not it at all. You look great, man.
I meant Astarion, but now that you mention it,
Yeah.
it feels a little bit not aging, maybe, but like
No.
a rock star.
Yeah, he's a rock star. I believe it.
All right. Nixmori asks, "What's your favorite little nuance of Astarion's personality?" So, and is it something you intended or something that came through the mocap or voice acting? As you said, Neil was somehow influenced Astarion as a character. And you kind of partly answered this, but did you have any way of influencing his mannerism through writing?
The mannerisms are mostly, it's not that they're baked into the writing. Like Neil obviously takes the lines and makes them his own. There's always that slight fear that you have, I think, when you're, as a writer, when you're taking something and then you're handing it off to an actor to perform, there's this worry that they're not really going to get it, that the lines won't land with them, or they're just not going to translate properly. Like the funny lines are going to be delivered in the tone that you expected and everything just falls flat. And from the second that I heard Neil kind of reading the lines, I was like, oh no, he gets it. This is perfect. This is great. All of the mannerisms that I had in my head just kind of translate really naturally to him. And that was a huge relief. In terms of, I think one of the things that I quite like about Astarion and where it came from is I remember there was some point where people realized that he had an int of 8 or something like that. Just not that he was not maybe quite as bright as you would otherwise maybe hope. And from that point on, basically, I was like, oh, he is a bit of a himbo, isn't he? And not stupid, but not as intelligent as he should be. And I've always really, really enjoyed that because I definitely have my stupid moments, and it's a really fun little quirk to play around with sometimes. I think weirdly the idea of Darian being just a very pretty idiot makes me very happy.
Well, now that you sanctioned it, everyone is gonna take it as canon.
Oh dear.
It's an endearing aspect of him that he had in Intelligence 9. I think his stats were changed, but he will always be Intelligence 9 for us.
There we go, yeah.
What's your favorite moment of Astarion in early access, of course, because I imagine that you cannot tell us about what happens further up, or something that stands out to you, but it was particularly meaningful or difficult or important to write for you?
Yeah, no, that one is tough. There's a whole bunch of stuff that's there and that's been written, but I think one of the things that I'm pretty sure this went in early access. There is the scene with Astarion where he's looking at himself in the mirror, or not looking at himself in the mirror.
That's in early access.
Excellent. Okay. Okay, good. There was just a bit of me that's like, I know I wrote that a long time ago. It did go out, didn't it? Anyway, so sorry. I really had a lot of fun with that scene because it's just, I don't know, it felt like it was approaching something from an angle that was a bit different. It felt like it was a scene that wasn't like his other scenes where there was more at stake emotionally from him, and there's a touch of vulnerability to it as well, where he's actually starting to open up to the character, to the player. He's actually starting to accept help. So that felt like, when I was writing it, that felt like a very big character hinge kind of moment, a moment where he changes from like one thing to another, or you have that possibility to connect with him a bit more. And I just had a lot of fun writing it.
I'm gonna use my admin privileges since I'm the only one who can talk here. But I think it reflects the mood of the chat. I think that's one of my personal favorite scenes with Astarion, and also how Tav can react to that. It's
Yeah.
really one of my favorite character moments. So it does come
Good.
through.
I'm really glad. I just also want to very quickly shout out to Pinku in the chat. My favorite Astarion bit will always be him talking about Ethel. She's positively demented. I love it. Let's tell her everything. That is another of my favorite lines. I will say that. Thank you for reminding me of that one, Pinku.
Why, she sounds positively demented. I love it. Let's tell her everything.
It was one of the best ones. So Dede asks about Astarion's past. So we don't know if the game events will ever address it, of course, but always, of course, without asking to spoil anything to us, because we know you can't. But did your process ever take you into exploring who Astarion was before he died? Do you have a backstory for that, or did all of this characterization mostly lean onto him as a vampire? Sorry for the spoilers, suitably odd.
No, he absolutely had a backstory, and he did from the very, very start. At the risk of being cheesy, like, you can't write a story where you tell where someone is going unless you know where they've been. So he has to have had that past to inform the person that he is now. The backstory kind of changes as the character changes. So the original backstory that we had for him is not necessarily still kind of the valid backstory that I have in my head. We always try to be very, very aware of, this is where Astarion kind of started when he was alive. This is what happened when he died and he was brought back, and then this was his experience as a vampire, right up until the point where he's grabbed by the mind flayers and you meet him. So you need to have that whole story so you can write a character that makes sense. Otherwise, his personality is going to be missing depth, essentially. If he's just all about biting necks and like avoiding the sun or whatever else, he's not going to be an interesting character. He's going to feel like a cookie cutter vampire. No, yeah, we try to be very mindful of the backstories.
I'm sure everyone now is crossing fingers that we managed to get a peek at that, because everyone will be very curious of that, to get to see a little bit of that.
I'm saying absolutely nothing. So
It wasn't a question. Mirella asks what probably everyone wants to ask, but nobody had the courage to. So, did you have an input on Astarion's hair, which is the crux and delight of all artists in the server?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had absolutely no input on Astarion's hair, but when I saw the concept art, it was one of the first things I noticed, and I'm like, amazing, this is great, fantastic. So a character with good hair can get away with literal murder in Astarion's case, I guess. Yeah, no, I had no input, but I was very, very pleased with the result. We have incredible concept artists, and so much what they do makes me very happy. Some of what they do terrifies me, but a lot of it makes me very happy.
Tiny Ingrid asked, as somebody who appreciates sensory experiences, so we're going into sensory territory, what sort of scent Astarion would wear? So would it be floral, earthy? Would it wear perfume?
Oh boy, there's a whole lot of questions that like we're going through where I'm like, yeah, no, this is something that I've considered and I've put a whole lot of thought into. How Astarion smells is not really one of them, amazingly. I would imagine he'd have kind of a floral, kind of like a dandy, foppish kind of scent. I mean, I think it would want to be something sharp and something that kind of surprises people a little bit. But yeah, I don't know, something floral with like a thorny undertone. I'm not sure, but it's a very good question.
Would it be a race with Gale about who smells better?
I feel like Gale is going to smell better. I don't know why. I think Gale is probably someone who smells surprisingly good. I don't know if it's that old book smell or what, but I just feel like Gale would edge Astarion on that one.
Which is impressive in itself, given
Yeah.
how well groomed Astarion is
hmm
in general. Julia Bambulia asks, what was Astarion's favorite food before he was a vampire? And did he enjoy spicy food at all? I guess this comes from the comment that he makes Shadowheart, I suppose. No, or Lae'zel?
Potentially. I think Astarion when he was alive he would have eaten well. I would imagine. Like I think Astarion is someone who would have enjoyed his food, if only because that means being brought down to eating rats would be that much more of a fall. I'm not sure on spice though. That's a good question. I might leave that one up to people's own headcanon. Astarion can eat whatever you want.
You heard it from the source. It's up to that canon. We're gonna fight about this, I promise you.
Excellent.
Julia says that she will canon no spice Astarion, so she can make him weep with jalapenos.
Excellent.
I hope it pleases you. Okay, Munmo asked very interesting questions. Question that is actually the last one from the ones that we have from the Astarion batch. Astarion has been one of the most loved and hated characters. He's very polarizing in the fandom. Have you been did it surprise you how it has been received by fans?
There are people that don't like Astarion. I'm just so heartbroken. I'm not going to say I'm surprised by how he's been received by fans. You kind of have a sense when you're writing a character. I'm just having a whole load of fun with this guy. I'm having a whole load of fun with these situations, with these lines, and you know that sense of fun is going to transfer to the people who play the game. So I'm not sure. I'm not surprised that people are having fun with him. I'm not surprised that people find him really annoying because I think he objectively is, but that is part of it. But I'm not surprised, but I am really touched. Like anytime anyone is like, oh hey, this character's really good, it means an awful lot because you spend a lot of time in your relatively solitary kind of writer cave just pouring this stuff out, pouring yourself onto the page in different ways, and to know that people connect with the characters, not just like to know that people are having fun with the characters means a lot. To know that people connect with the character emotionally or sympathize with the character or kind of see themselves in a character's journey is it's an incredible privilege, and it always makes me feel very, very humble and very pleased that folks are enjoying it. We have a lot of fun making the game, and it's very important to us that people have fun playing it as well.
While he is very polarizing, he's vastly loved by the community anyway, and I'm sure Astarion is an important character to many people who intervene in the community from what I can read. So yeah, so I don't know if you can see many people are expressing how important Astarion is to them. But yeah, I have to confirm he's a very important character to many of us, and I would like to let you know that the community really, really loves him. This was the last question, but I wanted to ask you one maybe last improvised question, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to say?
I mean, no, there's nothing that I can think of. I don't know. I'm mostly just extremely pleased to be here. I'm a little disappointed you were so respectful of spoilers and not trying to get more secrets out of me. That was the thing. Like, but that's also fine.
Everyone's asking if you will come back post release, so we can discuss the spoilers then.
I would absolutely love to come back post release, and when I can talk to you guys about everything that's actually there, that would be a whole load of fun. Yeah.
Stephen, I want to thank you so much for coming here today and having this wonderful birthday with us. You coming here is very meaningful to us, to all of the community. Yeah, you see how everyone was stoked to have you here from the chat. Thank you for being here and for answering all of our questions. And we've been very good, at not asking spoilers. So
You genuinely have, and I mean, first off, thank you so much for having me. Like, it's a genuine pleasure. It's so good to kind of chat to so many of you, and like names that I know from Twitter or from fan art or various different places. It's really great to be here. But also, like the main thing is thank you guys so much for your constant enthusiasm and just passion for the game in all senses of the word. Sometimes for some of the more spicy fan art. But it really means an awful lot to me and to everyone at Larian to have such an enthusiastic and just passionate and strong fan base. And we love all of the fan art that we see. We love everything, all the memes. We love everything that you guys produce, and you are a really important part of of the whole BG3 journey. We really appreciate it that you're on this with us. So thank you.
On behalf of us all at the Down by the River Discord, thank you, Stefan, for joining us to celebrate our server's 2nd anniversary, and for the insightful conversation we all got to enjoy. Also, massive thank you to all those who submitted questions, and to everyone who has helped make this happen. We are all incredibly grateful for this opportunity. Who should we interview next? Comment down below and subscribe to our channel for more BG3 content.